welcome to the 21st Vegan Convergence of the People. I'm Rebecca Allen, your Climate Healers MC. Today we have with us 3 panelists and Ray. We have Ray Kowalchuk, Keegan Kuhn, and Eva Hamer. Each of them have contributed to moving us forward toward a vegan world to help make big change happen. Ray has pivoted his 20-year career with media skills into working for animal rights and environmentalists. Keegan Kuhn has also done a lot of work with documentaries and filmmaking, and you know some of his films. He's either the co-producer and co-director of Cowspiracy, The Sustainability Secret, What the Health, Running for Good, and Cowspiracy, and more. And our third panelist is Eva Hamer. She's been vegan for 20 years. She and Adrian, let me just say, she co-founded Pax Fauna, which you can find at paxfauna.org, and she leads programs and policies for pro-animal futures. And she's been organizing for a long time, has worked at DXE, and I'm just glad that she's here. So here's our panel. Oh, and Dr. Rao is on our panel too. Thank you, Dr. Rao, Sailesh Rao, Director of Climate Healers and initiator of the Vegan Convergence for the Peoples. All right, Ray, take it away.
Thanks, BJ. I'm so excited to host this panel. This is a little bit of a dream team. 2 old friends and heroes of mine, and a new friend, Eva Hamer from Pax Fauna. And thank you, Dr. Rao, for putting a name to the appetite for destruction in the form of these 2 machines I've got behind me, the killing machine and the burning machine. And this really sets up the context of, the transformation that we've got at the industrial level. I've got a little film to play. It's just 2 minutes long, and it kind of introduces these as kind of the adversarial characters in our discussion.
Right, we're seeing a Word document.
Not seeing the movie.
Let me try that again. There we go. Thank you, Dr. Rao. And now we've got these two extra, anthropomorphized characters that are going to be part of our conversation, and we'll address how these two machines fit into the systemic change that we have before us. So first, Dr. Rao, what can you tell us about these two machines and what they have to do with the change that we see?
Well, it was originally it was an artifice I used to classify greenhouse gas emissions and cooling emissions. So I took fossil fuels and industry and put it as the burning machine. Then I took animal agriculture, forests, and waste, and considered that to be the killing machine. So then you can break down our emissions into these two major machines, and then there's a little bit for vegan food. It's tiny compared to the other two. And then you can ask, which machine would you turn off first? And basically, you have to turn off both machines, ultimately. But it's important in what order you do it. And so that was the intent behind creating these two machines, and then looking at we created a model called the climate bathtub model based on these two machines. And that illustrated why you should turn off the killing machine first, and then slowly dial down the burning machine. Because if we do it the other way, which is what everybody's trying to do, they're trying to turn off the burning machine first, and then ignoring the killing machine. If you do that, you're committing suicide as a species. Not only as a species, we are trying to kill off the whole planet. That's what I mean by committing suicide. The reason is that the burning machine is where all of the cooling emissions are coming from. And the killing machine has very little cooling emissions. It's basically just albedo change, the change in reflectivity. That's the cooling part of it. But most of it is just heating emissions that come from the killing machine. So if we turn off the burning machine first, all the cooling emissions will disappear in a few weeks, and you will instantly heat up the planet by another 50 to 87% more than what we are doing today within a few weeks. Now, if you change it, it's like, you change the light bulb in your room from 75 watts to 150 watts. You won't feel it right away. Okay, depending on, especially on planet Earth, because planet Earth has so much water. So it takes time for the Earth to heat up. So you will see the signal in the temperature increase for 3 to 4 years later, because the ocean has to heat up and the whole land has to heat up. So that's what happened in 2020. They reduced the sulfur on fuel that can be burnt in the open seas. It used to be 3.5%. They lowered it to 0.5%. And they had done some analysis saying it's only going to increase the heating on the planet by 0.079 watts per square meter. But in reality, it seemed to have increased it by 0.5 watts per square meter. Okay, huge, because there is a nonlinear impact when you burn over the open seas. So the air above the open seas is very pristine. And if you put sulfur dioxide, it acts much more powerfully than it does over land. They didn't know that, but it increased it by 0.5 watts per square meter. This is Jim Hansen's analysis. And he says that's why 2023 and 2024 were the hottest years ever. It just took 3 years for it to catch up and show up. And he said we have only experienced 1/3 of the heating in terms of temperature increase. The next 1/3 will show up over the next 100 years, and the last 1/3 will show up over 1,000 years because of the inertia of the ocean. Okay? And the good news is if you dial it down now, then the ocean doesn't have to heat up and then cool. The ocean will it won't impact the ocean anymore. So it's like a signal that nature has told us saying, focus on the killing machine. Go vegan as quickly as possible. Only then can you touch this burning machine.
Yeah, I think as vegans we really understand that focus, and we really want to push it. And we have to, engage a lot of people who really have spent so much inertia and energy into renewable energy as the solution to climate change.
Right.
It's going to be very difficult to get that ship to change directions. But
Well,
so we're going to need hands on deck.
Yeah. No, but I think of it as all that energy has been allocated already. Just shift it to doing the right thing. So I just want to steal that and use it for going vegan as quickly as possible. And then we'll deal with the fossil fuels later. Because the thing is, it's like if you press the clutch and shift gears, your car will, drive smoothly. But if you attempt to shift gears first and then press the clutch, you're going to break your car. Okay? In this case, this is not a car, it's a planet. And we are doing it in the wrong order for a planet. Okay? And I'm just flabbergasted that climate scientists don't see this. Okay?
Well, I can understand a lot of what you're talking about because I've awakened my inner environmentalist, and the key thing that helped that happen. You're a producer of Cowspiracy, The Sustainability Secret, and Keegan is one of the co-directors. He's less familiar because Kip Anderson had his face on the screen for most of the time, but I know Keegan is very passionate as a researcher as well. And I ask you, when you come on these conferences, do you see a post-Cowspiracy world as the work that I mean, so much heavy lifting by that documentary. I've met so many people who are vegan and say they are because they watched that documentary. Do you see the change that was it just one step? Is there a lot more still to go?
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think Cowspiracy was just one step. It's just one small part of this bigger movement. It's got to play a really important role, which is great. And a lot of people have, shifted to a vegan lifestyle because of the film, which is awesome. But in the big picture, yeah, we need a lot more. And I think Cowspiracy is effective in that it helped make people aware that animal agriculture is a primary driver behind climate change, but that it's not just climate change that we should be talking about, that it is desertification, it's species extinction, it's dying oceans, it's the larger picture. And we tried to produce something that took all these kind of siloed movements and bring them together, that this is about a global holistic movement to protect the life on this planet.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. And your consecutive documentaries are attacking different aspects of the things that need to change. You followed it up with What the Health, and a very interesting and a completely different direction was They're Trying to Kill Us.
Yeah. I mean, to be like the body of my work, it's pretty much all running on the same theme, which is trying to produce a more compassionate and more sustainable way of living on this planet. And we understand that not everyone's going to be drawn to environmental movements. They don't necessarily understand it or care about it, even though this is the only home that we have. So maybe they care about their health more than they care about ecosystems, and so go with that angle. Maybe they care more about pop culture than they care about their health. Maybe they care about pandemics. Maybe they care about fashion. Whatever it is kind of the angle. We realized as filmmakers and the teams that I work with that sadly there's not just one film to save the world, that we have to produce everything and anything that we can to try and help shift culture. And then it's not just films. That I see the filmmaking as one tool that's been effective, but we need all of the tools.
Absolutely. I've just recently become the executive director of the International Vegan Film Festival, so I'm all about films. But you're right; it's they are just tools to go out into the world, and we put so much information into them, and they tend to stick around. People are still watching Cowspiracy on Netflix, and it's kind of an activist in its own right. It kind of has a life of its own. I mentioned that I created this panel based around the appetite for destruction, and I've come across Pax Fauna in the process, and I'm happy to introduce Eva Hamer. And I've been nerding out on her articles on Pax Fauna and Irin Kenyoku. He's got a few articles as well. And it's clear that you're reading the same books that we're reading. So we'll have to form a book club sometime and analyze these non-vegan books with a vegan filter. And that's a great little task. Can you tell us a little bit about Pax Fauna and its purpose and your vision?
Absolutely. First, thanks so much for having me. It's such an honor to be next to such great workers for the movement. So Pax Fauna started in 2021 with kind of this question about how do we make the movement more effective. Eva Hamer and I co-founded it and had this sense of disillusionment that we had been working in the movement for some time and hadn't quite seen the radical progress that we really need, right, as a movement to, as a species to survive. So we started with a couple of years of original research where we did, things like literature review of the kind of narratives that the movement is using, that the opposition is using, and try to figure out kind of what's already out there and also what evidence do we have to point us to particular messages, framings having effectiveness. There are some studies you might have heard about around how if you ask, these are studies done on Americans, if you ask if people are in favor of banning slaughterhouses, something like 30% will say yes. Where in those same surveys, these same people are asked, do you think that eating meat is a personal choice and no one can tell me what to do? Do you agree? Something like 98% of people agree. And you would think that these different ideas conflict. That like, how could you want to ban slaughterhouses while thinking that eating meat is a personal choice and you shouldn't tell me not to do it? The answer that we had in mind was framing. It's really around the question. And it's not that people are being dishonest. It's that they truly have a different belief when they're asked questions in these two different ways. So our question when kind of going into the research was like, how do we use framing? How do we frame the message in a way that gets more like those 30% numbers and less like those 98% of people opposing us numbers? And through the research, we're talking about interviews with ordinary Americans, people who eat meat, focus groups with groups of them who are even kind of more resistant to animal messages because there's something kind of magical that happens when people are in groups. They kind of remind each other what that dominant narrative is, what they kind of really believe. And the main takeaway, if I had to kind of sum up, year and a half of research in a sentence, is that we found that focusing on a civic frame made people much more compassionate to our side, much more favorable to animals than focusing on the consumer frame. And so what that sounds like is that instead of asking people to go vegan or talk about what they're buying or reduce or whatever it is around the grocery store and the restaurant, we're kind of meeting them at the ballot box. We're meeting them where they are in this frame of somebody who's part of a society that the society can all make changes together. Whereas when we met them as consumers, and even when we didn't try not to meet them as consumers, so what I mean by that is that we didn't actively negate consumer type messages, they would bring them up. It's the main way that people relate to food is as consumers, right? So without doing some real work to not have them relating as consumers, they were doing that and they were feeling very powerless. And so that's where you would hear things like, yeah, whatever, I could go vegan, but it wouldn't matter. I'm just one kind of drop in an ocean. Who cares? Where when we would talk to them as voters, when we would really do whatever we could to get them into that civic frame, they would say things like, yeah, okay, I enjoy a good burger, I enjoy a steak, but like, if there was a big tax and like burger was $20, I guess no more hamburgers. And I guess it would be good to get dragged along. Actually, I would support that. We would hear these messages that are like, yeah, okay, as a consumer, I'm one thing, but as a voter, no, I want the best for this planet. I want to survive as a species. And so that's our kind of main takeaway from the research. There are a bunch of kind of smaller ones I could talk about, but all in all, that's kind of where Pax Fauna ended up with this really large narrative project. From there, we went to kind of try to put those findings into practice with the political organization Pro Animal Future. And with Pro Animal Future, we're interested in kind of doing whatever we can to really engage the public in that way, in that civic frame. So we're talking about voter block organizing, getting involved in electoral politics, lobbying, and running citizen-initiated ballot initiatives, which is a kind of almost uniquely American concept where citizens can just kind of write laws, get them voted on, completely bypass the legislature.
You've got both the grassroots and the top down political lobbying as part of your scope, and that's a great thing to do. And it's a balancing act, because usually one's feeding off the other. You don't get the political policies unless you've got a groundswell of support. You can't really do everything against the voters' will. But at the same time, that I really appreciate how you participate in this panel, because your organization is speaking for the animals first and foremost, and we've got other environmentalists who, we're all in the same heart. But environmentalism is finding justice for the planet, and it's less concerned about the taste buds of individuals or even groups of people. And we're encouraged that there's this aspect of reality of you were talking about evidence-based research. The evidence is that we've hit a wall environmentally. We do want people to come around, and as you mentioned, as the price of things go up because it's starting to pay for their externalities, people are going to go, well, I guess I said I'd never be vegan, but maybe I'll consider it now that meat is so expensive. And we're kind of seeing this play out in real time with the price of eggs lately, very much in the news.
Yeah, if I could add to that,
Mhm.
there's a selfish angle that seems to work with people. Cowspiracy was a successful film, but What the Health, which was very human health centric, was vastly more successful. Way more people saw that film, way more people were interested in that film, and way more people shifted their diet because of it. And it was just this kind of selfish is a harsh word, but it's that self-centered sort of thing where it's like, well, this is for me. And what Eva said about that voter kind of idea, where I guess it's that that people are do things when it directly benefits them versus this larger planet, which is like, this directly benefits all of us. You would think that people would get that, but there's something about people's desire to want something for them. Like, what do I get out of this?
And I think vegans all understand that we are part of a movement that isn't wanting something specifically for ourselves. When you put the animals first, then you're doing something for somebody other than yourself. For some people, it's the first time they've ever done that, and it's a contagious trend that you start to see the world in a different way. And really, we're overcoming speciesism, which is anthropocentrism. And I say that it's not a coincidence that the Anthropocene, the age of humanity, is, I think, the biggest symptom is our anthropocentrism. We think of everything, if it benefits a human, it must be good. So it's challenging those paradigms, and I really appreciate that Eva does that. Sometimes environmentalists do it as a kind of a coy second-hand thing, that we're talking to environmentalists and we don't want to look like a animal rights activist. But Eva, I know you rescued a beagle. Thank you. That's wonderful that we're looking at the individuals as well as the whole movement and all the animals as a whole. And we want to save all the individuals, and we want to save all the species. But ending speciesism is that's going to shape that character that will help us overcome ourselves. Find the humility to fit into what the 9 planetary boundaries, the safe living space for humanity, and that is of our own interest. we need a habitat more than we need to fulfill our cultural obligations and so forth.
Right. May I add, like the opposite of appetite for destruction is an appetite for regeneration. And the experience that we are finding is, in places like Sadhana Forest in India, when people come to visit and they see what used to be there, they go back inspired. And a lot of them turn vegan because they understand from there, when they visit, why going vegan is at the heart of this regeneration project. So Aviram Rosen has told me, in his theory of change, is that if there are 50 sadhana forests in 50 countries, the world will go vegan. Okay? It's enough to trigger everyone to go vegan. So that's his theory of change, and that's how it's going to happen. So you're appealing to people's sense of wonder, the beauty of nature, and the love they feel for animals when they see them in the wild. And especially in places like Sadhana Forest, the wild animals are there and they don't bother us and we don't bother them. They come, sometimes the snake comes and sleeps in your hut and goes away the next morning. So long as you don't bother them, they're fine.
Another film you produced is The Land of Ahimsa, which I edited, and Keegan was interviewed, and I wanted to recall that part of your interview where you said, as a white guy in North America, that the change is coming from India.
Yeah. I mean, well, just the simple fact that there's over 1 billion people in India, that, yeah, what happens, so much of the US's biggest export, right, is the culture. And we've exported our culture around the world, and we've watched other societies adopt this, US American lifestyle of high consumption of animal products, consumerism, all the horrors that come from the US. But we are seeing the shift, right, in other countries. And I think that, there's an analogy about how sub-Saharan Africa skipped over landlines when it came to phones, right into the cell phone age. And I think that potentially countries like India and China might be able to skip the last 50 years of American consumerism and jump right into the actual future, which is a plant-based diet. Because honestly, that's the only way we're going to make it as a species, just ecologically. Like, we just can't grow enough food for everybody to eat the way US Americans eat. Doesn't matter what kind of chemical agriculture you're doing, there's just not enough space on the planet.
In that sense, I'm grateful for the administration for making America unpopular around the world.
That's a positive outlook.
Yeah, it's always tough to talk about the silver linings of things. Well, a lot of people are suffering, and there's so much reason to be afraid. But systems, as we've been talking earlier in Sailesh's keynote, sometimes they need to break, and it gives us an opportunity to build back better. But we got to try to manage the fear and try to find solidarity and hope in building something. One of the things that I came across was the articles in Pax Fauna. I actually saw them in a YouTube video. Debug Your Brain explores the book Change, How to Make Big Things Happen. And we kind of borrowed the title for that for our theme for this conference, How to Make Big Change Happen. And Eva, you read this book, and I think you're co-founder of Pax Fauna have read it as well. And there's several articles that we'll link for other people to have a look at, and the video as well, because it explains what we need to do as a movement. I think the biggest takeaway from it is that influencers are overrated. It's small groups that have a lot of redundancy and strong ties, like this one. People getting together in Zoom calls, less the relying on how come we're not hearing about it on the 7 o'clock news. It's we are creating the change from the what Cintola calls the network periphery. How inspired were you from this book?
Yeah, very much. So the article where the animal movement will be reborn, based on thinking after that book, it's this idea of influencers being overrated is really interesting to me. And what I got from it really was that influencers are more, what they say is more symptomatic of what the people are saying. That to be a leader, to be an influencer, you can't go too far in front of the people you're leading. Otherwise you will be rejected. And so the idea is that people who are actually on the periphery of a network are the most vulnerable to change. The reason for that is that, so say I'm part of a church, and say I just got involved. Say I got involved a year ago, and I have a couple of good friends in the church, but I'm not the priest. I'm not a main organizer, but I have a couple of good friends in the church. If somebody comes to me from outside the network and makes some kind of behavioral change in me, or say in one of my two good friends on the network in the network, it will be a lot easier to make, say, that third friend. Now, like, say they have four. Say they have, like, my other friend has four friends. Now half of the close ties that this person has have made this change. For Santola, he differentiates between kind of, I think he calls them simple infections and complex. So we have like information, like, oh, there's going to be an earthquake. Oh, like some piece of gossip that can spread very easily, and that spreads very well through influencers. Influencer says it, everybody's got it immediately. But things like a pro-animal political orientation, a behavior of taking pro-animal action, or even like veganism, those are much more complex. Those are much more related to our deepest values and are quite complex in many ways to start doing, to habituate in our lives. And so when we do something like vegan outreach and we just target people randomly, the thought after reading this book is that we might be a little bit less efficient than if we were to target communities. Because when somebody, meets a person doing street outreach, say, and they feel really inspired, they cry watching a video and they say, wow, this is terrible. I can never eat animals again. That's a real feeling that they have, and that's a real state of being. And then they go back into their community and, their mom mocks them and there is nothing to eat at the potluck and everybody's acting like they're super weird and acting like they're judging them, and they are completely disconnected from their community. It is very, very difficult for that person to continue with that change. Where when groups of people are doing it together, when the target is the community rather than the individual, we might see some more success based on this research. I live and organize in the US, and this is a very individualist society. We all kind of think of ourselves as completely uninfluenced by people around us. When you ask people why they voted the way they vote, they kind of won't ever give you any credit for, give any advocates any credit. Like, no, I did the research and I decided myself, because we think of ourselves really, really as individuals. And I think a lot of times our outreach treats people as if they're individuals, and we're absolutely not. Like, we live in societies. I mentioned the Pax Fauna research that we did before, and the reason that focus groups were so much more difficult is that focus groups are actually how we live in the world. We don't come up with our ideas by ourselves. We come up with our ideas based on so many norm signals from the people around us. And so gist of this Santola research is that people on the outset, the fringes of a network, are more able to enact change because they have fewer connections that make up the majority of their connections. Whereas that influencer in the middle has many different people who they care about the opinion of. And if one of them comes to them and tries to get them to make this big change, they have a lot of pressure to stay the same. What the change needs to do is gather some momentum on the periphery of the network to kind of snowball until it can reach enough of a height for an influencer to change. And so when an influencer makes a change, that's a really good sign that there's some success, because influencers are they're very inert. They don't want to make changes unless they're going to be accepted doing it. Where, me on the outside of the network with two friends say, I have a lot less to lose.
It's good that you point out that when the influencers change, when a celebrity becomes vegan, that's an indication that it's now safe for a celebrity to say it in public. And we get all excited when we hear it as vegans, and it happens, so rarely. And there's some celebrities that we know are vegan or we suspect are vegan and have been for a long time, but they can't say it. And Santola points out we can now track everything digitally. We know exactly how Twitter spread and became popular because we have all the data to show it. And when people say, well, Twitter became big when Oprah did her first tweet on live air, And they went back and looked at it and at the data and said, no, it's not Oprah. This is a symptom that when it was growing fast enough for Oprah to actually do it, that was what created the change. And it didn't start from an influencer. It started from collective groups. It was in San Francisco, and everybody in San Francisco connected because they knew other people in San Francisco and they're part of the same kind of culture. And then it spread to Boston, not to, neighboring cities. So it's what people have in common. And I think that's, one of the takeaways there is when you do outreach, people are going to assess you to decide if you are like me. That is a core thing, and it's something to keep in mind for all the influencers who would like to see the health movement and change our health system to a fully whole food plant-based system. If everybody's a health coach, if everybody's a registered dietitian, you might have difficulty talking to people who struggle with their appetites because they go, yeah, okay, that's you. You've got the education, you've got the willpower. I need people like me to show that this is something that I can do.
Right. Yeah. I'm remembering some study where overweight doctors had a better results when counseling patients than fit doctors. That identity, that like feeling judged is such a big thing. I think every vegan probably knows that it's so hard not to come across as judgmental because just the moment that you decline to eat an animal product, you are judging them. And I think we see the same thing in many ways. And yeah, so that wide bridges idea that, goes from San Francisco to Boston, sort of starting to ideate what kind of thing this might look like in the animal movement. We took some research from Facebook they published their data of how many people in each county in the US are Facebook friends with somebody in another county in the US. And we were able to kind of map some like wide bridges. So where, a lot of people in Portland, Oregon are friends with a lot of people in Denver, Colorado. The idea is that, and this network is exactly what you would think it would be. If we start in Portland, we get Denver, we get a lot of places in the Bay Area, we get Asheville, North Carolina, Austin, Texas, Minneapolis. So nothing particularly groundbreaking there. It's kind of the liberal star that you would expect it to be. But the idea is that, you might think that like, oh, there's already a lot of animal rights activists in Portland, Oregon. I don't need to go there. The idea is that actually it might be a better investment to invest where there are a lot of people, because we're changing norms in a community that then can spread, that then a lot of people in Denver and a lot of people in Portland are like, oh, this is really normal in Portland, therefore it's the next big thing. Where if those people are more spread out, they're more likely first to fizzle out, and then second, they just don't really have anyone that they can together influence.
I just put a link to your article in the chat. That was where you were talking about those cities.
Yeah, I mean, it's an older book at this point, Tipping Point, which I think was Gladwell wrote. And very much pointed to the fact that we really only need about 10% of the population to adopt something, and then it snowballs. And so, yeah, just what you said about Portland, right? Like that, have a hotbed of activism or of veganism, then it does spread because people go, oh, that's the new norm. One of the reasons why I have always advocated for veganism and not any sort of welfarism or any sort of like halfway measures is because I figure if we're trying to get a shift, we don't need the entire population to go vegan. And people will say, well, if we can just get people to eat less meat. It's like, well, no, if we got 10% of the population to go vegan, 100%, like full on endorse a vegan movement and lifestyle, that has that effect of really snowballing versus people, you have this, sadly, what I would consider a watered down, oh, I eat less meat, meatless Mondays. And it's like, well, is that really going to get us where we're going to go? Because people are going to water it down anyway. So 100% veganism is what we should be advocating for so that we have these true places like Portland, where it's become more of the norm and less of the extreme and less of the oddity.
Yeah, you're making me think of the bell curve of change that Simon Sinek calls it the law of diffusion of innovation, where there's the innovators and the early adopters. Those could be the activists and the vegans who are just vegan. We're living our lifestyle. And there's the chasm that the early adopters is 34% of that bell curve are people who are looking and waiting. So, once there's a tipping point, 34% come, and the next 34% are the late majority, and they just follow the crowd. They don't have any stake in the argument. They just want to be normal. And the last 18% is the laggards. They're the ones that are usually making money off of the current system and resist at all costs. So they're usually creating a lot of that fighting that's happening around the chasm and saying, no, don't listen to the vegans. Don't listen to the vegans. And, right now we're getting a lot from the climate movement. Don't listen to the vegans. Dr. Rao, you're kind of leading that movement. You can tell, so many stories of people within the system who are saying, okay, your math is perfectly right. You have revealed that there is some very serious problems with how we're doing our accounting that serve the solutions that they have chosen long ago. And it largely is, I'm kind of being a little bit coy saying don't let the vegans win, but they want to phase out fossil fuels. They don't want to phase out animal agriculture. How are you dealing with that, and what can we do to help build the consensus you need to prove that climate change is about what we eat?
Yeah, it's the entire thing. It's not just climate change. Climate change is just a symptom. You have to look at biodiversity loss, chemical pollution, all of the planetary boundaries will be impacted if the world goes vegan. Okay, it impacts all of them. It's amazing. It's like nature has given us this one shot, solve the problem by just being kind to all life. And I'm appealing to the vegan community to use our research. It's, if they go and quote FAO's numbers, they're quoting the meat industry's numbers. Why would you do that?
But back to my question, a lot of the vegan community will quote your numbers, but without understanding it. And we need the evidence-based approach, but that's why I said consensus building in particular. Some organizations will not repeat it until they could say, "Oh, it's been peer reviewed." We talk about that.
Right.
You did a white paper, it wasn't peer reviewed, and they went, "Well, call me when it's peer reviewed." Now it's peer reviewed. Gerard Wedderburn Bishop presents on this VCOP quite frequently. Go watch those videos. He's got peer-reviewed evidence in one of the most prestigious climate journals now.
Yeah.
And they're still not talking to you. How do we build this consensus?
Give them time, Ray. I mean, it's only been a month since the paper came out, and we are now making noise with it. And his numbers are actually bigger than mine. He's saying 53%, and I was saying 31% for direct emissions, because he's including also the gross emissions versus net emissions. He was able to nail down those numbers. So he's increased it to 53%. And on top of that, there is the opportunity cost. In my calculations, the opportunity cost was bigger than anything else. So that was where I got the other 56% from. So that's how it's 87%. Okay. And I say to people, if you don't count opportunity cost, you are not a good engineer. Okay? I would fire you if you did this kind of work without it. So I've told people also, if the IPCC came and gave their numbers to me, I would fire them. Because I'm an engineer, scientists are the ones who do my work. You have to come and tell me what the data is, and then based on that, I figure out the solutions. The scientists are doing a slipshod job like the IPCC is doing, I would be mad at them, really, because it's going to impact my work. So if you're really trying to solve climate change, you have to include opportunity cost. If you don't, you're being incompetent, and history will not be kind to you. Okay, so that I know that.
You're picking up the legacy of other scientists who have approached this front of animal agriculture. And Keegan, you mentioned that Cowspiracy is a documentary that covered all the environmentalism and the impacts of animals. Yet the climate community has said, "Oh, it's the junk science. Don't listen. Don't watch Cowspiracy. Don't watch it. Don't listen to it and debunk it. Don't watch it." And usually that's a sign that there's something there that can't be defended, that they would prefer just everybody ignore it. Kip says in a very brief, maybe 2-minute section of the documentary, that there's these scientists at the World Bank who said it's 51% of emissions are attributable to animal agriculture, and that somehow in a lot of people's minds made it a climate movie, or as I said, it's just a tiny part of the documentary.
Yeah, that was something when we re-edited the film for Netflix when Leonardo DiCaprio came on board, and that was something we had to argue with them extensively on. They're like, that figure, has been debunked, and we're like, show us where it's been debunked, and they of course couldn't, and so it's got to stay in the final edit of the film. But yeah, I mean, when someone says, "Yeah, don't watch it," it's junk. It's a level of censorship that's a bummer. But I think we should also be very aware of that for our own movement as well, that when there's things that are counter to what we want to see. So when a study comes out that says veganism isn't healthy, I read it. I want to see it. I'm like, how did they come to that conclusion when they say that regenerative animal grazing is actually benefits the planet? I read those studies. I want to see like, okay, what is the other side, instead of just outright dismissal. So I think it's really important when we see the criticism to be like, okay, well, where am I doing that in my own life as well? Because we have blind spots in this movement, and we will ignore things, and we'll also promote, junk science sometimes too. It's like, and as somebody who loves science, like science and science communication is a huge passion of mine, it's really important that we have really strong, really rigorous science, and we challenge, bad science. And I think that's what Dr. Rao is doing continually, is challenging bad science or bad conclusions based on not full data sets.
Eva, your articles talk about a different kind of approach to activism. You mentioned a few already. Is there a different way that we should be engaging communities? Or should we be targeting individuals or groups, or should we be forming those groups that create those strong networks? There's the concept of bridges. Narrow bridges is just one person going to another group. The concept of a wide bridge maybe can be summed up as bring a friend.
Yeah, I think that, if I think about the way that we engage with the movement, for one, I think that, we ought not to think of ourselves as individuals so much as we are part of groups. And so when people ask kind of what can I do as an individual to make a difference, it's like, stop being an individual. The answer, we organize as groups. And the thing I'm really concerned with is political power, that our opposition has so much money and they have so much power. And there is a recipe for getting power. Political power in the US, it comes from, it doesn't always feel like it, but it comes from votes. And a lot of times, we talk about money in politics. The reason that money in politics matters is because money can get you votes. It gets you a lot of advertising. And in order to build up to the level that we can fight really credibly on the federal stage and talk about subsidies, talk about making meat at least cost what it should, I think we need to start local, and we need to start building power in a local way. A lot of animal rights activists, a lot of vegans are already organized enough, I think, to be able to win significant power on the local level. And we're just not doing it. We're not really, local politics can be kind of boring. There are a lot of times they're talking about potholes and street signs, and we're kind of like, what's the point of that? Well, the point of that is we can make friends so what we're trying to do right now in Portland, making friends in city government by not just going to them and asking for favors, but by going to them when they're running for office and helping them get elected. Finding people who are supportive enough, getting to know them from a really early place. A lot of people who end up in national politics later, for one, they start smaller, and local politicians can be very approachable and very eager to help. Just earlier today, I was canvassing with a school board member, somebody who's running for school board, somebody who could have the power to institute a green food policy in the public schools locally, someone who could have the power to make no more animal testing or animal dissection happen in the public schools. And it took me 5 minutes to recruit more people, to recruit more than half of the people who showed up to this canvassing event. Because we're talking like pretty small, like not a lot of people are interested in school board. We can be that. We can be interested in whatever ways that we can grab power, I think is really important. How this kind of ties back to Centola is that we can, again, think about wide bridges between cities. That if we see Portland and Denver, say, having a lot of pro-animal policies, all of a sudden every other city has a peer. A lot of times when you ask power holders to do something, they say, well, who else has done this first? And in places where we have enough people, we can do it first, because politicians should fear us, honestly. They should say, oh, I can't disobey the animal lobby. They will punish me at the next ballot. And that might sound funny. Like, that might sound like totally out of this world. And I promise you it's not. Like, I promise you that so many cities have enough people who care about animals, and for whom, like, animals are our main, animal stuff is our single issue. Like, that we're voting on that I'm not actually voting on the stop sign or the pothole. I'm voting on where do they stand on animals. We don't need to have 50% of the population do that. We only need to have enough to sway the election, which is vanishingly a small number. And if we're actually supporting people in their candidacy, we can even look like a bigger number. We can there are ways that we can kind of be even more visible than maybe we deserve for how many people we have. And all of this really matters, I think. So I think if I had one request of the movement, it would be to get political in much higher degrees than we currently are.
I love this line of discussion, and I hope you can come back to a future VCOP. We're quarterly, so we'll be back again in 3 months, and we're getting it close to the top of the hour. So I think we should do a round and say what are the things that we feel that how does big change happen? How do we shut down these machines? Keegan.
All right. So for me as an activist, I see groundswell. I want everything to come from the people first. And so that's why I've dedicated myself to public education and educating an informed populace. You can't make informed decisions unless you have all the information. So that's where I put my focus.
Excellent. Dr. Rao.
Well, I'm going to quote Jared Bishop. I think he was quoting the executive director of Drawdown, basically saying change happens slowly, 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 and then all at once.
And as systemic activists, we're always looking for those changes. Sometimes it's not what you do. Sometimes it's just because you're paying attention and you're seeing the cracks of that system as it's about to break, and then you mobilize based on what you're seeing.
We are creating the foundation of Planet B right here. We're already doing it, So so Planet A is going to dissolve once Planet B is reasonably in shape.
Eva, how do we snowball this thing? how do we apply the sociology, and I'm referencing a pattern effect that Damon Centola suggests for small communities. You can make your change. You have the power.
Yes, I want us to organize. I want us to organize politically, and I want us to, in the words of Mark and Paula Engler, declare victory and run, to get whatever victories we can, kind of no matter how small, celebrate them fully, make them as visible as possible, and use that increased capacity to go on to the next bigger thing.
Thank you. I'm hoping that the appetite for destruction, appetite is such a broad topic, and it applies to all kinds of environmentalism and conservation and veganism. So I would like to try to have recurring panels, and I'd welcome you all back.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.